Welcome to The Story Matters. Our affirmation is that all stories are really important. They matter. Your story matters. Uh, the stories we share with each other matter. Today we have a guest who's going to share with us stories about children and family and a special vision. Kerianne Severy is here. And Kerianne, when we talked earlier, I noticed how enthusiastic you are about children and about family and the possibilities and the needs. So would you begin by telling us your thoughts and your feelings about those kinds of issues in this life?
Yeah. So my story starts with I'm a teacher, and in my work as a teacher, I met a lot of students who were in the foster system, and they told me their stories, and some of them were really sad and really hard to hear. And it inspired me to become a foster parent. So I did, and we got our first foster child he was 2.5, and shortly thereafter we got his half-sister, and then shortly thereafter I found out that I was pregnant.
Oh.
So I went from 0 to 3 very quickly. And then we ended up adopting the oldest one that we had. He's my lovely, charming, energetic little boy. Now he's 5. He's going into kindergarten next year. The little girl that we had was reunified with her parents, her biological parents, and that was bittersweet. It was really wonderful to see the family be able to come together and get into that good place. And it was really hard to say goodbye. And then I have my daughter, who is almost 2. And that whole experience transformed me and readjusted my priorities. I found through that experience, I was given a 2.5-year-old who wanted to run. And I had an infant who had other needs, like she needed to practice her crawling, and she wanted to explore things and put them in her mouth. And there was nowhere where I could go to be able to help both of these kids get their needs met. I could drive up to Echo and use that little tiny space up there and spend a lot of money to use that little space up there, which they do love. And that's an hour drive away. So with restless or on the way back tired kids, it's not a fun drive. Or you can go down to Rutland, which is another lengthy drive. And we did that often, but I really wish that there was a space in Middlebury where I could bring my kids, especially in the winter time, and my son needed to run.
Right.
So that's what brought me to this idea, this need for a play space. And then I had been on the wait list, every wait list possible, for child care for my daughter, and couldn't get one, and ended up having to leave my job for almost a year, unpaid leave, and had my own little mini pandemic all by myself. Right before the pandemic that everyone else experienced. So I had this really long pandemic experience, the first part of which everyone was continuing on with their lives, and I was home with my child, my infant, and didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have supports. I didn't know other people who had babies. It was a really lonely time. And it made me think about the child care deficit that we have, and I went into a lot of detail, learning about how to start a child care, and I read the whole regulation book, and thought, wouldn't it be amazing if there was a play space, a children's museum, that was also a daycare. And through all of my research, it came down to you really need a space, a physical space, before you can even think about childcare, because that's where the funding lies. It doesn't help you find the space. It helps you renovate a space, add cribs and get staffing and things. So it wasn't possible to start out that way. So I decided to really hone in and think about this play space idea while I was home alone with my kids, and then through the pandemic while I was home alone with my kids. And then as we started to come out of the pandemic this spring, I started to put out the word again, and putting together a board and started to try and actually make this happen. Before that, no one wanted to talk about a children's museum where children touch all of the things because it was a pandemic. And now I think people are seeing how valuable a space like that really would be. So that was the first goal, was to have an indoor play space. And then through my work as a foster parent and seeing the difference between being a foster parent and being a biological parent, in both of those have different kinds of needs and different sorts of supports that I needed as a parent. And I wanted to build those structures into the museum because they're hard to find. And we have great resources in our community. We have Women's Safe and we have CSAC, where we've met because we're both on the board.
Right.
But not everybody knows how to access those resources. So I want that to be a big part of this place where you can come and your children can play, and you can also get support. And you can learn about what supports there are in our community that go beyond our capacity.
This is a large...
I could keep going.
This is a large... Well, sure. By all means, what kind of responses have you been getting so far?
Very, very excited parents. They keep asking, where are you located? And we don't have a place yet. We're trying to find one. I think we're narrowing in on one, fingers crossed, but I don't have anything solid yet, so I don't want to announce anything.
No, okay.
But there's a lot of excitement about having a place. So far, we're doing the mobile museum model by doing these pop-up events. We did the first 3 bundle markets, outdoor markets this spring, and we did the Bristol Friday nights, and we hope to do more of those. And then the next 2 events that we have coming up, we're doing a big arts and music event on August 7th in the morning from 9 to noon. That'll be on the green. Hopefully we're still waiting on my permit. And then we'll be at field days. Every day at field days next to the Children's Barnyard. And then in September, we have 2 more big events. We have a literacy event that we'll be working with the area libraries on. We'll have some storytellers that will be really cool. And a Healthy Bodies event that we're working with Porter to put together. And then continuing to work on putting together events, closing in on a space, hopefully being able to renovate a space once we find one, and big plans for next summer.
Okay. You use the phrase we. Can you say something about who has become the we for you?
Yes. So I have a wonderful team working with me. My board is amazing. They have so many different skills that come together. So I have someone in public relations. I have a designer. I have an elementary educator. I have someone who works at the college and knows a lot about finances and fundraising. And then that just to name a few. And we're actually have one spot open. And I'm hoping to get someone who specializes in the very early years, the 0 to 5 years, and who has experience working with the under-resourced families, so that we can make sure that they can have access to this space as well. So it's not just for people who can afford to go multiple times a month. And then we also have committees, because it's an all-volunteer organization still. Eventually we'll be able to add paid staff, hopefully. So we have a child development advisory committee, an accessibility committee, a fundraising committee, a communications committee, and people outside of the board, anybody can apply to join one of those committees if they really feel like they want to step in and take volunteer efforts to the next level, but aren't quite at, we want to join the board level. That would be a great way to contribute.
Have you found yourself having to do some paperwork in order to get all that in place?
A lot of paperwork.
A lot of paperwork. Okay.
I'm actually right now slogging through my 501c3 application. I do have a fiscal sponsor lined up for while we wait for that application to come through. But that's a high priority now. We finally just got another donation so that we can pay the fee, because it's a hefty fee to apply to be able to accept donations.
Sure. So have you moved into that organizational pattern, or is this a group of people who are gladly taking on the task? Or
yeah, they've been great, and it's tricky at the beginning because we have a working board, so they're wearing two hats. They're doing both the governance and the operations. So we've kind of split roles a little bit, and some do a little bit more governance and some do a little bit more operations, and that'll transform as the organization transforms.
Right, that's good. When you come and you talk about museum, how do people give you any strange looks like, what do you mean, a museum?
Well, a children's museum is very different from a history museum or an art museum. It's more similar to a science museum, where it's really about interacting, and kids are exploring and playing with the exhibits, and through that process learning about themselves and their environment. And it's going to be an amazing experience. I can't wait to have it open and to be able to bring my children, because there's so much more that you can learn about in that environment than you can just at home. Like, I try and set up these activities for my kids, but there's a lot of prep that goes into trying to create these activities at home. So to be able to bring my children, have them be in this wonderful, enriching space, and then as a parent, I can help facilitate that learning. That's one of the things that we want to have at each of these exhibits, is information about the child development and why that exhibit was built, the purpose, and how you can interact with your child to enhance that area of child development, and then what activities you can do at home to further that.
Have you ever been involved with anything this complicated before?
I've been on a board and I've run events before, but this is a new task for me.
Right,
which is why I'm leaning on my board.
Right?
Yeah.
There is a difference, isn't there?
Yes, and I'll be leaning a lot on CSAC as a great example of an operating organization, and they are very interested in helping me with those support programming. So we want to have play dates where parents can come and meet other parents of same age kids, and kids can meet kids of same age kids. And then there'll be a pediatrician, local pediatrician, at those play dates to be able to talk about child development for this specific age group and offer activities that you can do. We already had one of those. It was at Royal Oak last Saturday, and it was raining, but we still had a great turnout.
Okay.
That was a great event, and we want to do more because,
of those.
Yes, parents loved it.
Yeah.
And then we also want to offer that next level of support groups for parents of children with special needs, or foster parents, or adoptive parents. I identify with all of those groups, so that's what I think of.
Yeah.
And CSAC is hopefully going to be able to help us out by having a clinician there supporting that work. And then the exhibits are going to be informational and educational. We want to have a sensory room for kids with sensory needs who might be on the autism spectrum. It's just accessibility built in everywhere you look.
Okay. Have you made some kind of estimates of what kind of space you need?
Well, how we grow will really depend on the space that we can get.
Okay.
And we don't want to grow too fast and then fall apart. So we're trying to be very strategic about this, rolling out. And in our rollout, as we build exhibits and take on more space, we want to ask volunteers to come and help build the exhibits, and we want to ask local businesses to sponsor the exhibits and to sponsor the build of those spaces in return for being able to advertise those local businesses. So, say there's a pretend little grocery, one of the grocers in town could sponsor that, or there's a bank, one of the banks could sponsor that exhibit, things like that.
Okay. So a number of committees, and as I hear what you're saying, you're seeking to engage the people who have the concern, maybe because of their own children, but maybe because this is their community interest, or maybe this is their skill, their training. So an organization that has a number of activities going, depending upon participation.
Right. It's going to take a lot of people power to make this happen.
As opposed to staff power that has concentrated tasks and assignments and so forth.
And it's a nonprofit, so in order to make these things happen, the money has to come from somewhere. We're going to be applying for grants, but the way that grants are written, they don't cover everything, and grants don't cover rent.
No, and they don't last.
Right, and they don't last. A lot of grants will be only a couple of years, and then they expect you to be able to maintain the program through donations. So if we want this thing to last, we need to back up what we believe in by getting those donations and sponsorships. And you touched on something really key there. It's about the community. Our children are the future of our community. If we want to have a thriving community, then we need to support our children. We need to help make healthy, happy, resilient children in our community.
Right. And there are a number of organizations that are committed to that, but they too find that there's always more work to do than they have staff or personnel for. So collaboration is a key word, isn't it?
It is. And that's one thing that we're trying to be very careful about, is partnering with anybody local and not duplicating anything that's already in existence, but being able to support anything that's existing and helping people find those opportunities. To be able to come to this fun play space and then learn about all the supports that our community can offer.
Do you have a timeline?
Well, that'll come with the sponsors that we can get. Right. It depends on how quickly we can get money and whether that's sustainable if people continue to donate over time. That will determine our rate of growth. We want to move into a space as soon as possible so that we can offer these supports to our children and their caregivers, but we need the money to do that, and we don't want to be operating it out of a cash flow situation and then have to leave the dream behind. Right.
Okay. So that means a lot of preparatory work, right?
Yes.
And thinking about a lot of times we get caught in the unexpected consequences.
Right.
And that's not a nice thing to have happen.
Right.
It's a human thing to have happen, but it's so it really sounds like you're trying to imagine those.
I've been doing a lot of research about businesses and organizations, specifically nonprofits, and the suggestion is to have the finances for a full year. To have enough money put away to be able to staff someone for a full year before you hire that person. So that you can say, I know that you're absolutely hired for a year at minimally. You don't hire someone and say, sorry, we lost all our money. What a terrible thing to do.
Right.
So we're trying to be strategic.
Yeah,
And mindful.
So many pieces.
So many pieces.
Have you thought about this as a puzzle?
I love puzzles. I'm a math teacher, so the world of puzzles is...
Is there a way to create a puzzle that people can see how this...
I've created a lot of charts. A lot of flow charts. I like the idea of putting it together as a puzzle. Yeah, I made bubble charts and flow charts.
Yeah, because then you can see where the pieces are.
Yeah, I like that.
Charts always are helpful, but there's always one in a line. But you're really talking about something that's going to be here and here and here and here, and the putting of this together in a circle here around one particular kind of skill or one particular need, and other people. So how do people? Have you thought? How do people? How do people join?
Well, so we have a website. It's a beautiful website set up by our designer. It's www.vermontchildrensmuseum.org.
Oh, she knows it by heart.
I do. It's the same as my email, vermontchildrensmuseum@gmail.com.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you go to the website, there's a page all about how to get involved. There's information about our team and the committees there. There's a donate button.
A donate button.
There's ways to contact me. And there's a local interest survey. And I really want as many people as they can fill out that local interest survey, because that is going to be the data that we can provide when applying for grants to be able to support all of our programming to say, yes, people do want this.
Okay.
So we need lots of people to fill that survey that's on the website. www.
So they have a place where they've gotten connected. Okay. Sounds like you're working on that. How to get connected in these groups so that they get to know the other people who have these interests. And
yes, and each of the committees is headed up by one of our board members, and that board member leads the committee and sets up the times for the committees to meet, and then reports out at our board meetings about what they did.
I'm like you. I'm a visual person, so
talking in the air. Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yes.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And what else can you tell us about that would tell us what we might do now? I mean, in addition to the donate button.
That's an important button. Our do now is advocating for why we need this. I'm finding more and more that we are not valuing the importance of having spaces for children, supporting childcare, as much as we need to be. We saw through the pandemic how important childcare is, and I feel like we're not putting our money where our mouth is right now. We need to be doing a lot more.
Yeah.
And so to me, in addition to hitting that donate button, coming out to our events and showing up when we open our doors, to continue to advocate for how important childcare is.
Yeah, maybe it could be a collection of all people who've learned new things on pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, because there have been new things that have been learned. I mean, and we cannot assume we're going to go back to everything the way it was before, because some of those things are gone.
Before it wasn't that great.
And what are the new things?
Right.
What are the new things?
Well, before the pandemic I didn't have childcare. And my story is not unique.
Yeah, right.
So it was a problem. It still is a problem. And we need to fix it if we want people to be able to live and work in our community. Because if they can't go to work, we're not going to have a thriving economy.
Are you going to do something with Zoom or with something with the media to where people could see one another in the same way we see one another for Zoom? You thought about that?
For learning about the museum, you mean?
Right.
That I have toyed with the idea of a Q&A and brainstorming session.
Yeah.
And some of the support groups might end up meeting on Zoom. That way you can, put your kids to bed and then you can go to your support.
Yeah, we're not going to walk away from, we're not going to walk away from Zoom.
Right. Hopefully we don't use it as much as we have been.
No,
but
no.
It's a great resource.
It is. Oh, this is very exciting. We're almost to the end of the time. Is there something more that you want to make sure I hear and people out there hear?
We are looking for volunteers to not just go to that next level to be on committees, but also to be able to be on hand at events, and when we do open our doors, to be able to help staff until we are at a place and we're big enough and we're getting that inflow of cash enough that we can support full-time staff. We're going to need volunteers to do that work so that we can keep our doors open. So if people are interested in volunteering at events, or for example, we have the fair, the field days coming up, and we would really like to have people volunteer to help man that station next to the children's barnyard with us.
And we hope that you might show what you and I've done here as a way of starting.
Yes.
Okay, and inviting, and being able to do some more things in different times with you or with other people in the future. So,
yes.
All right. Well, folks, we've had an exciting presentation of an exciting concept, and the vision is there, and the desire is there, the skill is there, and the people are there. So you can be the part of that people too, And so we invite you to be contact with Kerianne and the Children's Museum of Vermont Children's Museum.
Yes.
That's a nice title.
Thank you.
So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting
me. Enjoyed the
me.
conversation.
Thank you so much.
Okay.